welcome to a very special broadcast coming to you from Point Blank here in Hoxton, East London, where today we've hooked up with Eastern Electrics Festival to bring you a very special panel discussion. We're honoured to be joined by Ralph Lawson, by Ashley Beedle and jozif for a discussion around the art of crafting a classic house sound. House has a very special homage. It pays homage to the classic sounds of the origin. Everything from a 4/4 beat, from certain chord progressions, organs, vocals, pads. There are loads of things which can go into making up that classic house sound, and we're here to discuss exactly that. So first of all, guys, many thanks for coming down and for getting involved. The very first thing I wanted to ask each of you is what it is for you that defines that kind of classic sound of house music. So one by one, Ralph, any things that come to mind for you?
Yeah, well, obviously you were describing a classic house sound in terms of the sounds, the drum machine, the chords, the vocal. I mean, yeah, that's the point. And I think new technology played a massive part in creating a house sound. Obviously, a lot of it made by Roland at the time. You know, the 909, the 303 that was brought in. But for me, I mean, it's a little bit of a well, it's a big cliche. But I mean, there was the one sentence that defined it all for me at the time, which was "house is a feeling." So we can talk as much as we like about production methods and technology, which I do think are important and played a part. Don't get me wrong, but you know, I think what defines a house track is also in the artist's, mental state and projection of what they're trying to achieve as well. You know,
their intention behind
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree because I think if you listen like really, really early doors, like a Jesse Saunders record, like that On and On record.
Yeah.
If you listen to that record, or if you listen to like a Jamie Principle record, those records don't sound anything like each other because that On and On is super mechanical, stripped back and quite punky in a way because it's cheap thing, whereas that Jamie Principle record is the most beautiful thing in the world, but they're still house records. So I think Ralph's, we're all going to agree on it.
Yeah,
it's just
house
more,
exists as a state of mind.
Yeah, it's definitely a feeling rather than.
I think there's something really interesting to be said for the fact that it's not when you do think of genres, house is not something that's that specific.
No,
really.
No.
I mean,
it's turned into something quite specific, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I think it has turned into something that, but I know it's certainly the old records that I remember from when it first started. Anyway, you know, looking back because I'm not that old. Looking back, is that they all sound none of them really sound very similar. Whereas if you listen to a deep house record now or a tech house or whatever it is, it's very the formula is quite similar.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry,
go on, Ashley. Go on.
No, I was saying, I spent some early days in New York in the mid '80s, and I that's where I first started hearing the first, if you like, proto house records.
Yeah.
That were coming out. Even those records now, for me, they stand up. Not necessarily that they actually measure up production-wise to what goes on now, but the feeling of them and what they bring over. So there's definitely house is a definite feeling.
I think also things, particularly with that crossover thing that we're talking about as well, is that because it got to a point where house music was then turning into something very electronic. Because before that, if you think about like the South Soul and the Philly sound and the disco thing, it was all still very much instrumentation kind of based. And I think at that point when producers went from sampling like a disco record and then putting a beat under it to then just going straight to using electronic equipment, that's when it really went, and DJ Pierre started fucking around with those knobs and made something which was truly electronic. That's when it suddenly, I think anyway, it suddenly went off in its own little, because no longer were they really reliant on sampling, South Soul records.
I mean, so then we're talking about, technology playing a part. I mean, another thing that interests me is the kind of time. It's obviously something that's really, never gone away. It's still as popular as it probably has ever been. Do you think there is, a certain time period when house music was really in its infancy that, that had an effect on that? I mean, whether it's, by... certain things that were going on in the US at the time. Do you think that played a part to create and kind of cultivate the sound that it is?
Yeah, of course it did. I mean, you get pioneers, and the pioneers will always be some of the most famous people within the scene. They'll also be some of the most influential people in that scene. I think Joseph's point is exactly right. And I was going to bring the same person up myself, but you've got Jamie Principle at the time had seemed to have more skills than everyone else. He was making these records, but if you listen back to them now, they're really quite incredible. The level of production.
Yeah, still frightening.
What he was trying to do anyway with limited gear, I think, as well.
You know,
and he was a kid as well. He wouldn't. I don't think he'd ever been to a club or something.
Yeah.
You know, he was like some kid in a basement somewhere.
I mean, there's something to be said for, you know, being a feeling, never going to a club.
Exactly. So because you can go to nightclubs or you can listen to DJs or whatever, and you can go out and go, yeah, I'm really inspired by that. But to sit in, your basement, and I think he was living with his mum or something. It's bonkers. To go and then do something like that, which, like Ralph says now, isn't that fucking record is still crazy.
Yeah, then you had Marshall Jefferson as well, who just basically gave up his job overnight, spent it all on the gear, and went back in. And a very different sound again. You know, he was using pianos, some vocals. He was maybe using not different drum machines, not so much 909, maybe a Linn, maybe a 727. He's got.
Also
and
as
then,
well.
But then it sounded very, very different from British producers, like a guy called Gerald, who undoubtedly made a classic house record in
sure.
or like 808 State, who undoubtedly made a classic
left
house
field.
record.
I mean, left field.
And these, that's what point is that these are the early guys, but I think it's mistakes. I think we get a bit retro looking at that. I think there's a classic house record made or 2 or 3 at least every year, maybe more. I mean, last year was Maya Jane Cole's What They Say classic, probably. It's Andres New Fiora classic, probably. You know, it's going to stand the test of time. You know, they come along. So I don't like this kind of constant retro. This is house, and we've always got to look back to this 1988 onwards or pre.
But I think what's weird about that is that if you look if you're talking about those guys. Like around that really time, like Jesse Saunders or Ed Tennessee, any of those guys, those people were continually looking forward. They were trying to find like a new way. So they were going, oh, well, this is our music, but we don't really give a fuck about that. None of us can play, but we want to do this thing, like very futuristic looking forward. But it seems really almost ironic that when it gets to a point to where we are now, is that we spend all our time looking back instead of going,
or even the house music itself is a retro, is looking back.
Yeah,
in order
it's
to
beautiful.
make a house record, you have to look back.
It's hilarious. Whereas in actual fact, these people, then obviously if you're going to go into the Detroit thing as well, those people super were talking about the future. These guys were talking like space age technology and trying to move things forward. But yeah, like Russ said, it just seems funny that we look back now.
It's interesting now, isn't it? Because you've got a lot of these new crews and producers coming through that seem to some weird reason harking back to not even like 88, it's like 92.
God, well, not even that, 2000. That is a fraud. But no, you're showing your age now.
What happened in 92? Merc. Classic house records again.
You know what I mean?
They're coming along.
But it's interesting. There does seem to be, I think, in some respects, a bit of a brick wall that's cropped up at the moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's all right. That won't last long.
Yeah. Are there any? You've kind of mentioned a few here, but are there any real tracks that you think epitomise, the house music for you? And, who you mentioned a few, obviously, but are there producers who were there at the forefront who maybe didn't even, really kind of think about, the fact that they're...
I loved Larry Heard. I thought Larry Heard really just...
I was going to say that as well.
And his group, remember there was 3 of them. So it's not just one person, this is a scene, this is a Chicago scene,
also
it's on the radio, the Hot Mix 5,
still gets
clubs,
played in sets, every week.
Yeah, but again, it's very different sound. This is a guy that's musically trained well. He's a drummer, but he's also obviously knows his keys undoubtedly because everything's actually in tune. He's using Junos for bass lines. He's playing everything himself, and it's beautiful melodic music.
Chord progressions are amazing.
The chord progressions are amazing. He's gone from jazz. It's gone from and so for me, I was a massive fan of his, and I think he stood the test of time.
He was a big influence on me.
But Jamie to Principal, where is he now? Is he working in a shoe shop?
I don't know what is he doing.
But I mean, he's not. He's around. I follow him on Twitter. But I mean, what's interesting is like what happened? Where do these people, what do they then do? Do they come and, is it just like they dipped into it, did some tracks and then did some...
Well, I think a lot of them got
MK. We were like, where's MK? This guy comes and makes a load of classic tracks. Whereas we're just thinking, he's just gone. No, he hasn't. He's been working with
Pitbull.
with Will, what do you call him? Will Smith. And he's probably earning far more money than he ever did at a house. But then he's back and he's making records again for our scene, So these people can continually make classic sounding records. It kind of seems to be inside them to make great sounding records,
I think for me it's kind of like, even though we've said that we don't want to like put on a sound and go, this is it. I mean, I've mentioned that Jamie Principal record because I just think she still sounds lovely now. But also that Joe Smooth Promised Land thing.
That's
I mean, that's...
I think that's just a fantastic...
Because the thing to me also with that is like, I kind of, when I started first hearing that record, when I first started playing records in the early 90s, was that I thought that was a record that had been written then. And it was only did I just sort of realise, actually, no, this is a really old record. And then listening to the structure and the way that record's actually written, this is sung. I mean, that record's, there's a really fucking big message in that song.
Yeah.
You know, and again, comparing that to, you know, like an early Jesse Saunders or, you know, one of the Vince Lawrence records, it's like those records are so stripped back and they're so, you know, quite harsh in a way.
Yeah.
So that, you
like
know,
a
that
DJ Tool or something
totally,
like that.
yeah, for sure. But quite rough and ready, kind of
Yeah.
hard. But I kind of quite like that again. In fact, they had no idea what they were doing, and they were kind of going, again,
We
talk
don't,
about,
do we?
yeah. I still don't, in general, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know what I'm doing.
But that's when
here.
you go back to technology, because that is an important part
Yeah.
still. So a new bit of technology can create a sound.
Yeah,
And that
of course,
303.
that's 100%.
Remember the 303. Basically, it was just such a weird interface, and no one knew what to
Couldn't
do with
work
it,
it.
how to play
Yeah,
it. It couldn't
it's
work
impossible.
it.
That was a
So of course,
That's
DJ
massive.
exactly. So DJ Pierre's basically messing about it, trying to get a
bass
sound,
line.
trying to get a bass line. Can't be like, wait, man, that sounds good. Put some drums on there, and you're off.
Because that's how he talks. He talks like that.
And you've got acid tracks. You know? It's totally.
But the thing was-
Little Louis is another one
Yeah,
that needs to
yeah.
mention, because this
French
guy's an artist. This is the thing that I think needs to be, you know, and it's not totally relevant to your question, but I think it's an important part of house. Is like, you know, you've got people like Little Louis. These kind of people should have been stars.
They
Like,
should have blue
They should have,
plaques.
Yeah,
exactly.
houses, yeah,
And what
exactly.
happened was, because it was such an underground form of music, it couldn't get consumed in the traditional ways, whatever. But in America,
Well, it's
mainly.
black music,
You
so
know,
they can't
but
promote
it's
it in
7, it's 8
America.
minutes long. It's not
Yeah.
radio friendly.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and the rest of it, you know, these guys and not the kind of stars they should be. And
some of them
you know,
old.
you know, and some have done better than others, but. You know, they basically, as well as down to like, I think was it Larry Sherman that was running tracks?
Yeah, he's
But basically
ripped everybody
it was basically giving young kids $250, but
Yeah.
at the time was, you know, that's a lot of money for any young kids, but there's 250, I'll buy the Dats off you.
Yeah.
And then no one actually knows how much these things were selling, because he didn't tell
He didn't
anybody.
sell
But, I mean,
anything.
these were
Thousands,
basically selling millions
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
time. You know,
Well,
this is not people selling a
they-
couple of thousand underground house records. These are people selling a million
records,
records. Yeah.
They didn't
Yeah,
do
so
when they
it's
did
just like, that's a significant.
when they did Love
number
Can't Turn
of-
Around. I think they said something like the only guy that was the distributor said I was counting them. He said we did 2,000 records a day in Chicago.
Yeah. Alone.
And it's
In
like,
one store.
Yeah,
One
it's
store.
but you know, it's what there was a guy called Vince Lawrence who used to be like I think his dad had a label or a record company, one of the two, and he had access to a studio, and he was like the only guy who knew how to work the equipment. So people used to go to him. And get him to engineer his records. And he used to press up, he's 17, this kid, and he presses up, I think it was Jesse Saunders' first tune. He pressed up these records and he pressed up 2,000, and he went to just the first store that you could go to, and he said to the fellow, look, I got this record, guy, put it on. He said to the guy, how many do you want? The guy said, how many have you got? And he went, well, I've got 2,000 in my car. I said, well, fuck it, give me all of them. And he said, he wanted like $2 or $3 like a record.
Yeah.
And they said to the guy said, how much you want from me? Well, I'm going to try and blag it, yeah. He said, I want $5 a tune. The guy goes, all right. And he goes, you wrote me a fucking check there, bang. And he sold him like that.
sold him like that.
You know. Farley Jack Master
unbelievable.
Funk used to write some stuff that he stole off Steve Silk Curly and just call it house. It was just like ramblings. So he just put house on it just because it would just fly out the
Just
fucking
fly
door.
there, yeah. I mean, how about you know, to move it up to today? I mean, do you feel that we've kind of mentioned it briefly there with Andres, with My Jane Coles? You know, is it right now? Is it possible for people to create, you know, a kind of classic house track?
absolutely.
Of course it is. It's all, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't matter what art you're doing. If you're a painter, if you're a writer, if you're a poet, if you're a musician, I think it's possible for you to write a classic piece of music because it's something that's set to it's apart from everything else. And that's going to.
It resonates.
I'm going to play that forever. I know I'm going to play that
I think
forever.
one important ingredient you need to throw in the pot. You've talked about technology. You've talked about houses of feeling. You've talked about, you know, it's right time, right place as well. You've got to resonate. The classic. You're talking about classic. You can make there's millions of brilliant records. Are they in the right time and in the right place?
That's a huge
Maybe
point.
not.
Yeah.
It's just a huge point. Is you sometimes you just got to. I've just dropped this down. I mean, maybe Julio Bashmore did. Is that a house record? But I mean, maybe he's done it. I mean, like last year as well. I mean, the first.
Or Serve,
Well, even the other one, the one before.
The one before.
Whatever.
It's
like,
that
but it's like, you know, that's resonated. So I mean, it's going to stand the test of time. It's going to be around a long time. And the thing for classic about when you're saying something's classic is I think it steps out of the underground. I think underground like predisposes something to stay, you know, in this world of dark, sweaty nightclubs that we all love. But but for a classic record, I think you're resonating on a wider scale. And for me, that means you are kind of reaching
which is
out.
a good point.
And when those records hit at the right time, right place, they're cross-genre.
Which is what they
as
did.
well,
They
you
did
know?
it all. Actually, if we're talking about the history of the old stuff, is Ralph's exactly right. In fact, if you look at those really big records, the famous ones, they've all done exactly that.
Yeah.
They've all crossed over into being these people that are around.
Other people get it as well.
It's not just your house.
I think it's something that it kind of it pushes its way past the club. You know, it gets out of just being a nighttime 4 a.m. thing, and it comes out and everyone.
Love is the message, man.
That's a classic.
There you go.
Classic. Example of a classic record. It is. It was in the came through the nightclubs. It was a B-side. I was just reading about it recently in Tim Lawrence's brilliant book, Love Slays a Day, and he goes on about MFSB. It's the B-side. No one's playing it. And, it gets picked up by no, it wasn't Mancuso first. Was it Nicky Siano first? One of them, big New York DJs. And then as a B-side, and so it's massive in but it's basically the gay underground disco scene until it's keeps going and going and going until it's on the radio.
It gains that traction and
probably.
And that's when maybe there's more interesting discussion in the whole. Because you're narrowing it by saying house. I mean, you could the whole classic thing. You can follow through. I mean, when I got the question through this
house
morning,
is disco's revenge.
It's disco's revenge. Disco's ugly, scruffier brother.
Disco done on the cheap.
Like you said, when they start sampling the Philly sound and the stuff. I mean, when I got the question through this morning, one thing I kind of thought I'd let it roll through my brain, and one thing that came up that I thought was an interesting point was like, can you purposefully make a classic house?
As if you're trying to.
And I think that's an interesting one, because I think it's one of those things, the harder you try, the further it is away. I'm a producer, he's a producer, and the only person sitting around this table who's made a classic is him. And I bet when he's sitting in the studio and he's making New Jersey Deep by Black Science Orchestra, or he's making Express 2 for maybe Music Express, which are bona fide classic records. I bet they were just done. You were vibing, you were buzzing, you weren't going out to make
no thought whatsoever to the point of trying to make.
Yeah, we don't. All those things worked because something was in the air. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
were part of the scene, buzzing on the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, you go in the studio going, right, we're going to make. The more you go into that, if this is for young people, that are wanting to get into music, I think the more you kind of push and look for, I'm going to go in the studio with that thing in that psychology. The harder you're going to find.
New Jersey Deep took me 2 hours.
Yeah, I can imagine.
2 hours.
It's Jazz and Nova sample. That's right.
Funkin' over, But it took me 2 hours, man. And it was funny when we did it, and I always remember turning around to Mark, the guy who engineered, and I just went, "There's something about this, isn't there?" And he said, "Yeah, there is, isn't there?" And when we delivered it to Boy's Own, the funny thing was it was the A-side, Philadelphia, with the drums, which we thought was the A-side. That was the one. And everyone went for that. They went for that side, which was in some respects to us, it was like the throwaway track. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's come up a few times. That similar thing.
And what's interesting about that then, when you arrange the house, is exactly what Ashley said. It's like, that is a Funkin' Over sample that was a loft classic for David Mancuso 20 years previously. That is then getting sampled, made into a house record by the the aspect of the beats and the fact that how Ashley's cut it up, and it's a classic again. So you can double classic.
I think it's also important to make sure that when you are using that thing, and we can just go on about sampling now, that's something totally different, but bringing something back is the fact of actually getting something from before and making it sound like something else, as opposed to getting something that's from before and going underneath and going, oh well, that's mine and that's something new, because that's a whole. Then to me, you're almost ruining classics. I've heard some stuff, I won't even name who it's by, recently, that I've just been like, what the fuck are you doing? Because why don't you just, if you want people to hear this record, just say, hey look, have you heard this record? Don't put your name on it, put a kick drum underneath it and maybe change the arrangement a little bit and then say, hey, that's mine, because that's almost like disrespecting a classic or ruining a classic,
I mean, there's another thing that I wanted to bring up on that point is there are lots of kids out there who hear a lot of classic records and want to kind of recreate that sound. Is there, how would you advise to go about doing that, but still, keeping an eye on forward thinking, not just recreating.
Just listen to loads of old records.
I think the problem is nowadays is it is a completely different scene to what it used to be. I.e., you had so many different factors involved. Damn good drugs. No, seriously. Damn good drugs, right? An almost semi-illegal nightlife going on. Do you know what I mean? There's so many different factors that made certain records what they are. Today, I don't know. I feel that it's quite antiseptic in some ways. The way that producers are looking at making.
Just
But I think that
clinical
question,
about the whole
about
thing.
but I think
Yeah.
your question says it all, because your question's saying, you know, here's the elements in a house
Yeah.
record. You've said here's the drums, here's the chords. But I mean, so it might be really easy for a young producer to say, right, I'm going to sample a 909 drum machine.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a nice roady, paddy sound.
Yeah.
I'm going to get like sample a nice Lolita Holloway or a bit
Yeah.
of like nice disco vocal.
Yeah.
Cut it up, and they might cut it up in an interesting way, but it's still going to sound. You're still trying to do something.
Yeah.
By what you think is
the constraints
is
of
a
it,
house record,
yeah.
rather than
So-
you know, someone might go in and think, and you know,
It's
someone-
house by numbers now.
It's house by
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm getting all these records that are so retro, and I was like, you know, I'm thinking, you're looking back and you're trying to, you know, this is not progressive
Yeah.
thinking. And then the other thing comes along where just takes some of those elements and then maybe changes, like uses an 808 as a bass line.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think that you can credit, you know, what Bashmore's done.
I mean, that's the one
you know,
person
and
I
then-
was
and-
going to bring up.
yeah.
You know, he has a
and
very
then
house
you're creating something
sound.
interesting, because then you're getting, you know, a new kind of music that came through London. I mean, look, you can't underestimate London as well, and not just London. I mean, the UK is like, you know, we're saying a lot about the American artists. So yeah, but we did take it early on, and we've always had our own.
Yeah, we had
take.
an amazing
We've always
take,
had our
I
own.
think,
You know, and you can make a classic UK dance record as well.
Yeah.
You know, and it can be
So
cross.
what advice do you have for, you know, if someone is you know, in love with house music, they are, you know, they're going out and buying records, crate digging every week.
They've got to find their own sound.
producing.
Yeah.
You've got to find your own sound. Just stop trying to imitate. Stop thinking these are the elements I should put in, and start putting in the elements that you feel
Yeah.
are right for the
Yeah.
tune.
Just make it up as you go along. That's basically what I would say. I mean, pretty much. I can only talk for myself. For me, it was like you fall in love with something and you go, "Oh, this is amazing," and then you have your take on it. And after that, when you write music, you kind of go, "Well, I kind of think this is what I should be doing." I mean, I don't know. This is what I kind of like that sound, and this is the process. When you're DJing, you think I should play this record next. I think that's so important.
You just let it pour out.
It just comes out of you, because otherwise,
I
if you
think-
sit down and go, right, I really, really want to write a Julio Bashful record, then it's like, well,
Yeah.
fuck, don't, because
That's
he's
what's
already
happened,
doing
though.
it,
That's
mate.
exactly- and that's the funny
He's
thing
got
that's
his own
happened,
app.
you know. I like Disclosure.
Yeah.
I really
I
like
think
them.
that White Noise is a brilliant
Yeah,
record.
and I love the
Brilliant
new,
record.
and I love that
Yeah.
running
And they
VIP
sound incredible.
mix
Yeah,
they
yeah,
did.
yeah.
I still play that.
Yeah.
I think it's an outrageous record.
They sound unbelievably good as well.
Yeah, but you know, regardless of what people say, it doesn't really matter to me. But I like them, and I'm a fan.
Fairly clinical,
Yeah.
though, from what you were saying.
Fairly clinical, but I think, you know, for that, for instance, when the Disclosure came through, and you can probably vouch for this, all of a sudden you're getting sent a load more promos coming through,
Yeah,
digital promos, and they all sound like Disclosure.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's
And
always
they've all
happened.
sat there and gone, shit, that's doing really well.
Yeah,
Come on,
exactly.
get in there, make that. You know what I mean?
I mean, there was a period where if I heard one M1 organ,
Yeah.
another one, I was just going to throw the computer out.
yeah. The one that used to get me is the M1 click. There's a finger click.
Yeah. There's a
finger
sound.
click.
On the M1 that every single
And the sax sound.
and the sax sound that every single producer started using, and of course the infamous M1 organ sound. Do you know?
Yeah.
And
I know, I used that
but-
recently myself.
I mean, and it
Andy
came back in
Stanton
fashion.
remix.
Yeah, and it came
Yeah.
back in fashion. I mean, you know, and then it's kind of like incredibly overused.
Yeah.
Very quickly again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's gone away for another 10 years until we
Yeah,
find another
yeah.
sound.
Yeah.
but-
And on the final thing, as we are kind of wrapping up on time, what do you think? Where do you think you know, the sound, where house music's going to go? You know?
See, I don't. You see, with that, I'm not even going to say it's going to go here, because I don't think that's really something we can, you know, predict as such.
no.
But I think it's in an extremely healthy state at the moment.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Really
yeah.
healthy state. I mean, we're still here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think he's still got places to go. It's interesting though to see the UK. I think the UK, what's happening in the UK is really cool. It's really good at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Because you always get those kind of different elements coming in. You get reggae bits coming into it. Do you know what I mean? You get the whole hip hop thing comes through with it. The rave thing comes through with it. I'm not sure. I was looking at America, hoping that the EDM thing might open up a few doors,
Yeah.
but I don't think it has at the moment.
We talking about in the office recently about the fact that, you know, while right now this EDM thing, you know, doesn't sound that amazing, what you might get is it's opening people into the world of electronic music.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Maybe in the, you know, the next lot that come through.
Yeah, the trickle down could be amazing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, you can sort of go, yeah, it's disgusting and blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, because on the face value, it maybe doesn't agree with the principles and the values of what we've all grown up with when it comes to house music or electronic music.
Yeah.
But at the same time, is that there's a whole lot of people now that are able to go and work in America that weren't able to do that before.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot of people that are selling records in America that weren't won't be able to do that before, because kids are now going, oh yeah, well actually I really like Tiesto and Skrillex and that other guy, but also I'm going to listen to someone else's because to them
disclosure.
It's like so I don't know where it's going. I mean, to me, I just think it'd be really nice to hear someone really taking some crazy risks.
I think the guy that's most interesting for me coming out is Joy Orbison. I think that guy's really dope.
Joy O's, he calls himself.
Stuff with Bodica.
I think that's really in a good place for me. That excites me. I went to the Hideout Festival last week, and I just, really take my time to try and check a lot of DJs out, because quite often I'm playing at my gig, or there's a couple of other people, they might be playing similar kind of music. I like to throw myself into. I went to see Skrillex even. I'm going to experience what. I went to stand in the middle. I want to see what this is all about. But I went to see my favourite. I thought the kind of freshest and most interesting was what Joy was doing. And I think that's a really, it's a real mix of sounds, and and also a great producer.
Yeah, fantastic producer.
And I'm liking a lot of the new cats out there. Do you know what I mean? What they're doing, like as I've said in quite many an interview of late, T. Williams got me going.
I love
T. He's a good little producer. Do you know what I mean? It reminds me a lot, funny enough, of Kenny Dope. Back in the day. Yeah, he does. With Kenny and his solo stuff. But it's all good, and I think that as long as there doesn't have to be some sort of like book on how to make house music or a Bible on house music and how you do house music. House as we said.
That was that horrible track. That was, I think, my most hated house track of all time. What's that one? Was like, first you get a kick drum.
Yeah, first you get a kick drum.
then you get a hi-hat. Then you get a clap. Then you put a bass line. I was like, if it was playing at the time, I'd literally walk out of the room and hang myself.
No.
What a lovely way to end it. On negativity.
Brilliant. I mean, advice in that, in itself, don't paint by numbers.
Exactly.
No. So as we do wrap up on time,
we just make a point that it's about 900 degrees. He's trying to replicate the house feeling by making us as hot as you can be in the hottest nightclub ever.
Clean street.
33 degrees outside and 90 in here.
I mean, just to say a massive thank you to you for coming down and being involved. And a huge thank you to Eastern Electrics Festival as well for hooking this up and for making this happen. The festival itself, it takes place at Nebworth Park from the 2nd to the 4th of August. The lineup's incredible. It's huge. All of these guys playing, of course. If you head over to easternelectrics.com, you can check out all the info and tickets as well. So that's it from us. Again, a big thank you to the guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. And thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Everybody wants to be somebody. Everybody wants to be somebody.
At Point Blank Online, you've got two methods of interaction with your tutor. Firstly, you've got the weekly online masterclass, which is in real time. And then also we've got feedback on your assignments, and that's known as DVR. So the online masterclass is a 1-hour session you get with your tutor every week. You can ask questions about the lesson content and get instant feedback, and also demonstrations on the fly from their computer desktop with our streaming technology. DVR stands for Direct Video Response, and the concept is really simple. You upload your Ableton Logic or Cubase project file to your tutor, he downloads it and then pushes record on the screen capturing software and evaluates your work, so basically giving you one-to-one feedback. You see all of the mouse movements and any parameter changes made by your tutor. It's kind of like sitting in the studio over their shoulder watching what they're doing whilst they work. We've found the DVR process has truly revolutionised the way that we teach online, and the results speak for themselves. Book your place on a course now by visiting pointblankonline.net.